Gabriel Rubio is an interesting player because I think he could play both spots. He's the second biggest defensive player they have.
As an incoming freshman.
Right. I mean, he's every bit of 6'5". You know, he's at least 6'4". He's listed at 6'5". He's got long arms. He's a big, thick kid. You know, he's another guy. His dad, dad played in the NFL, so he's kind of got that big body genes.
Sure.
And he's a guy that could play nose tackle and be a really disruptive, penetrating, physical, dominant nose tackle. But he also is a guy that, has a skill that could allow him to play 3 technique. So I think he brings some of that versatility you'll like in a 285 to 290 pound body.
Yeah.
And so he brings you some of that beef as well. So he could also be someone that with a good spring and knowing Gabe like I do, he's a really engaging kid.
There's no question about it. He ran just a quick story. He ran into a friend of mine. They're building a house in South Bend and right next to one of my buddies. And he's like, this was probably before the pandemic. But he ran into Gabriel and he's like, this is the biggest teddy bear. He's a great kid. He was playing with my kids. It's like, clearly comes from a really good family, that kind of thing. So people should be very, very excited, not only on the field to have Gabriel Rubio, but his off the field personality as well. Yeah.
Here's the thing about him though. He's a really nice, fun loving kid off the field. He has a switch.
Those are the ones you want, man.
When he clicks the chin strap onto the helmet, like something changes in his head, right? Where he becomes a different dude, and it's not a nice guy if you're an offensive lineman or running back or quarterback. I mean, this is a kid that, as a junior in high school, had over 40 tackles for loss
in 1 year,
one season, over like 17 or 18 sacks. I don't care what level of football you play at. That's insane production. That's like the D tackle version of Tyler Buckner.
Right.
With just stature, just like, no way. Come on. And then you start watching the film, you're like, 4, that's number 5. Yep, that's 6 tackles for loss in this. You're just like, okay, yep, it's there. And the thing about him too is he's not your typical top 100 recruit. Like Irish SI All-American ranked him as Notre Dame's highest ranked player in the class. They ranked him as the number 49 player in the entire country. But you talk to Gabriel, and he doesn't have that typical I'm one of the best players in the country mentality. He's kind of got that hunger, like he's got something to prove. And he's a worker. Like here's a story. I believe I've told this before, but if you haven't heard it. So when Gabriel showed up to Notre Dame's lineman camp, and this is in the summer of 2019.
Yep. We
all knew in the recruiting, covering the team world that he was going to commit to Notre Dame that weekend. It was going to happen. He already had a scholarship. He was coming in town to kind of take another visit, but he was going to commit in South Bend. He wanted to commit in South Bend. So what usually happens 99 times out of 100 is a kid will come to the camp and just kind of be there.
Sit on a golf cart.
Yeah.
They do.
But Gabriel came and practiced, he was like jumping in front of dudes to take another rep. He just wanted to battle and compete. He won the lineman, top defensive lineman award at that camp. He was conducting himself like a kid who was trying to earn a scholarship from Notre Dame.
Not somebody who was going to commit that weekend.
Who had already gotten a scholarship offer. They'd already talked about committing. Then, he pre-conducted himself like someone who was hungry, and I love that level of competitiveness. Absolutely. And that's one thing I love about Gabriel. He's not going to be like, well, I'm a freshman and there's all these players in front of me. He's going to be like, okay, I'm going to be coming after you. I'm going to be coming after you, in a good teammate kind of way. But it's like, dude, you better bring it, because if you don't bring it, I'm right here.
Yeah.
And that's when we talk about depth, Vince, that's why depth is so important. Number one, the main reason why depth is important is because you need to have the talent to be able to put multiple players in the field and still be productive.
Sure.
Whether you're second or your third guys on the field, you can't have big drop-offs in production. It keeps guys fresh and all that kind of stuff. But the other reason depth is important, and Pete Carroll was the master of this at USC, Nick Saban has mastered this at Alabama, is, hey, you don't want to practice hard today? You think you got a spot earned. You don't want to get after it in the weight room. You don't want to go to class. You want to do all these kind of things. You don't want to conduct yourself like we're asking a guy at this program who's trying to win a championship conduct himself. That's fine. Hey, number 2 guy, get in there, or number 3 guy, get in there. And they're fine because it's not some walk-on.
Right.
It's not some 3-star kid who's just happy to be here. It's, hey, my next top 100 recruit, come in here and get on the field and show this guy, what it's like.
Sure.
There's a lot of opportunities for people to get Wally pipped on this football team, especially on defense. If you don't bring it every day, and that type of competition, if you use it correctly, and I think Elston and Coach Freeman and those guys will do it, is it creates a passion, but also a focus. If you can't look, I know you got finals, I know you got your girlfriend this, and I know you got your family this, but today on the field, you better lock in, because so-and-so is unhappy. He played 3 snaps last week, and he wants to play 30 snaps this week, and he's going to show everybody what that he should be on the field. So that's what I love about the depth at this position, is it helps keep you focused, and that's why it's so important to recruit top players year after year after year, because you never know who's going to get hurt. You never know who's going to transfer. You never know who's going to have a breakout and leave early for the NFL, Right. And so you have to recruit year after year after year. Mike Elston has done that. I mean, remember, Vince, in 2016, when Notre Dame signed that great DN class with Dalen Hayes and Julian Aguara, Khalid Kareem, they didn't sign a single defensive tackle. And if not for Jerry Tillery deciding he wanted to play defense, their best defensive tackle signing in the 2015 class was like Elijah Taylor or Micah Treadway or Brandon Tiassam. They've come such a long way at recruiting defensive tackle, where Jamion Franklin would have been the best defensive tackle recruit in like 4 or 5 different Notre Dame classes before this recent stretch, and he's transferred out because the opportunity wasn't there.
Right.
And so that's a great place to be in, because it protects you from injury. It protects you from a guy maybe just isn't making the improvements you need. But even if everybody plays to their potential, it allows you to throw waves of talented players at teams. And there's enough diversity of the skill sets to say we can also match up if we need to. If we got to go big, we can go big. If we need to get penetrators that are going to attack, we can put penetrators that can attack. And that's a great asset for a defensive line coach and a defensive coordinator to have.
Well, I remember talking about when Notre Dame was facing off against Clemson in 2018 in the Final Four. I mean, the biggest thing was, they've got some guys on their starting lineup on the defensive line, but it's the 8 guys that are going to be coming at you, because they just keep sending guys, and that's why that defensive line was just so good. There were backups that got drafted into the NFL after that 2018 season. So that's if there's any kind of comparison. I'm not saying that Notre Dame's at that level, but that's what I'm saying about
getting there. That's the whole point, right? You got to get there, and they're much closer to that now than they were when these two teams played when Clemson and Notre Dame first played in 2015.
Right. Yep. And it's just those waves, they kill you.
Like a lot of the backups on that 2016 team were then starters on the 2018 team, and a lot, I mean, that's where you need to be, right? I mean, that's what the good teams do. Hey, we lose so-and-so, fine, it's fine. Notre Dame lost Khalid Kareem and Julian Aguara to the NFL, 3rd and 5th round draft pick, and they were just as good at defensive end this year, if not better. Notre Dame loses Jerry Tillery to the first round of the NFL draft in 2018, and the defense comes out the next year without him, and they have even more tackles for loss against the run in 2019, and they hold points even fewer teams to even fewer points than they did in 2018.
Right.
That's what you want to do. That's what good programs do. It's that reloading, and Notre Dame has the depth on this defense to where, wow, they can really reload. And the other thing too is, really, there's only one guy who's definitely done after this year, and that's Kurt Heinisch. Right. That's Jason Amiola may be done because he was a 4-year player that could technically take advantage of the COVID year in 2022. But even if both of those guys leave, that's the other thing is like, okay, fine. Now Riley Mills is going to be a junior. Now Jacob Lacey is going to be a senior. Now Howard Cross is going to be a senior. Now you get right. And I think that's where you really feel good about the health of just not what this team can be in 2021, but in 2022. But then in the spring, however, I think the other part of it too is you can manage reps a little bit better in the spring to where you don't have to worry about guys wearing out. Because here's the other thing too, Vince, we didn't talk about. When guys get tired and fatigued, there's a greater risk of injury.
Sure.
And so you can manage practice better. It's not just games. You can manage practice better now because of the numbers you have. And so I think that's another benefit to this. There could be days say, hey, look, we're not going to play Kurt much today in practice. We're going to give Aiden and, Riley and Gabriel chances because we know what Jason's had a great week of practice. Hey, maybe today's your day of taking a breather, and it's a reward for how good you've been.
Management, baby.
Right. And so that's the other thing that depth does too, is it allows you to stay fresher throughout the year, not just on Saturdays, but you can manage reps in practice. You can manage reps in the spring. You can manage reps in other areas and not feel like you're losing anything. And so that's why we say, to wrap it up, that this could be the deepest position group. Now, what we need to see in the spring, however, is can this group take that next step and be more productive on the ball? For all the talk we talked about, that has to happen. And we're going to start to see it this spring. They have to be more productive. They have to make more tackles for loss. They have to get more hits on the quarterback, not just be disruptive, but be disruptive to the point where you're now making more plays on the ball, not kind of doing things that allow your teammates to do it. That's going to be the final step for this group of players.